everybody. Welcome and good afternoon, and thanks for joining us again for our 8th event in our Survive and Thrive series, proudly sponsored by Newcastle Permanent. While this event is being delivered across multiple locations, I would like to acknowledge that the Hunter Business Chamber operates across the traditional lands of the Awabakal and Warramai people and pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to any Indigenous people joining us online today. My name's Bob Hawes. I'm the CEO of the Hunter Business Chamber, and it's my pleasure to introduce this event today, where we will shortly welcome a number of our regional leaders to join us in the discussion. In this series, we've heard from a number of national business leaders, politicians, economists, and public health experts that we've tried to unravel the impacts of COVID-19 and learn how to adapt to a business environment none of us has ever experienced before. Today, we're going to look forward. We have assembled a panel of regional business leaders from key sectors to discuss to discuss the process of recovery and reform, what we can learn from their experiences and where we can find opportunities that the crisis inevitably presents. And it's my pleasure now to introduce you to the three panellists. Firstly, we have Dr. Peter Koch, who is the CEO of Newcastle Airport and joint winner of our 2019 Business Leader of the Year Award. Peter has really been at the coalface of the crisis and in one of the industries and local businesses hardest hit by COVID-19 restrictions. Welcome to you, Peter.
Bob, great to be here.
Also joining us on the panel today is Bernadette Inglis, CEO of the Newcastle Permanent. The Perm was quick off the mark with the support package for its business and personal customers and has been assisting many people in our region throughout this crisis. The Perm also came on board as a major sponsor of this series, and we are very grateful for their support and their recognition of the value of stimulating ongoing engagement and discussion within the business community during the pandemic. Welcome, Bernadette.
Hello, everyone, and thank you very much, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you, and thanks again for getting behind the series. Our final panellist is Hennie du Plooy, who is the CEO of the Port Waratah Coal Services, heads up a key link in the Hunter coal chain and has good insight into the fortunes of an industry that is a significant driver for our regional economy. Hennie is also the president of the Hunter Business Chamber, and I thank him for joining us today. Thank you, Hennie.
Hi, Bob. Good to be here.
Thank you. We're also joined by Amy Delore. Amy's our Policy and Public Affairs Manager, and Amy will be facilitating the discussion and the audience questions. And once again, I remind you that we'll keep an eye out in the chat panel that you can use to pose questions to our panel during the discussion. If you'd like to leave your camera on, that's fine, but if you do get up to move around, we'd please ask you for the courtesy of turning it off so that there limits distraction. We also do record these sessions, however, we only record the speaker views, so only the guest speakers and facilitators will appear on the playback video. Thanks again for joining us. I'm now going to pass over to Amy to get the discussion underway. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Bob, and welcome again to our guests and all of you who have joined us today. To start off today, our three guests come from three quite different sectors: tourism, resources and finance. I'd like to begin by asking each of you how you think the region has fared economically through this period of social isolation and pandemic-related restrictions. Peter, perhaps you could start off?
Yeah, I'm happy to respond. And what I'll do is talk more about the visitor economy sector, the tourism sector, where my business is. I mean, I think the only way I could describe it is devastating. Many businesses have just overnight almost lost effectively 100% of their income. Our passenger numbers went down by 99.6% from about 108,000 to 400. So 108,000 to 400 people per month. And I think speaking more broadly about our sector, it has to be recognised that it's come off the back of, for example, some of the wineries with the bushfires had lost their crop. So not only had the drought suffered from the drought, but then the bushfire was devastating to many visitor economy businesses. And then, you know, the mid-March, all of a sudden you had no ability to earn any income. And now, even coming back, people are, you know, there was a good weekend and lots of people started travelling around again inside New South Wales. But but because of the high cost and the washing down of tables, etc., businesses weren't able to really capitalise on that. So I wish there was some good news, but it was a real king hit, I think, for the visitor economy sector.
Bernadette, could you give us a bit of insight into what you've seen both in your industry and through the customers you've been dealing with?
Yeah, so what I thought I'd do is I'd share with you through the eyes of our customers and our people, and financial services has really been front and centre through this pandemic. And as a financial services institution, Newcastle Permanent, we've received over 1,700 requests for assistance from our customers. Now, to put that in perspective, that's more than we would receive, and we received that in a couple of weeks. That's more than we would receive in over a year. So that kind of gives the kind of the scale of it. We are a large participant and a large player in the Newcastle Hunter region. So we have many, many customers in this region. So it also shows the level of concern that customers had about their circumstance and about the environment. So as a CEO, my priority was to make sure that there was massive uncertainty in our customer base. And so what we wanted to do was move quickly to provide some certainty for our customers. So we came out with assistance packages. We came out with, an ability for business customers to extend their overdrafts and things like that. We got ourselves in a position within a week. Because this was quite unexpected. We got ourselves in a position within 5 business days of being able to go back to our customers within 24 hours. From the day one, go back to our customers in 24 hours, and within 5 days, actually be able to give them a decision about their outcome and how what options we could provide them for that. And look, every customer is different in this. So that was the first thing I would say. Then the second thing I would say is that was kind of in March-ish. Now we have just completed our first round of going back to all of those customers. So of about the 1,750, only about 1,100 of them actually required assistance. Many of them were just inquiring about their options. And we've just gone back to them all, and we're talking about, coming up to your 3 months of your repayment delays. And interestingly, over 50% of them are saying, okay, we think we're going to be okay now. We think we're going to be okay, and we think we'd like to go back onto normal repayment cycles, so reinstate our repayments. So that says to me that part of our community is starting to actually go into recovery, albeit that it's early days, but part of our community still requires ongoing support and are seeking that ongoing support. So I would say that I think we are seeing a good resilience in our customer base and in our communities, and we've supported that through our charitable foundation, as you probably know. But we are seeing that some of our customers are feeling more confident about maybe going back into their employment, more confident about what their financial situation looks like. So I'm seeing that as some green shoots for us.
Okay, well, that's very interesting. Hennie, what are you seeing in the resources sector?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Look, I think there's a couple of perspectives. One is clearly the resources sector, and like a couple of other sectors in our region, such as manufacturing, the resources sector, while it being far from business as usual, after dealing with the initial impact of operating under a significantly different set of constraints, largely delivered what they would normally deliver. In fact, through the business chamber perspective, which is obviously my other one, through our membership, we've seen a wide range of impacts, and that is from the sorts of impacts like, as Peter described, in the hospitality and tourism sector, where everything came to a virtual standstill almost overnight, to other sectors which largely continue to operate as normal, or in some cases even experienced an increase in demand for their products and services as a result of the crisis. So that I think goes to Bernadette's point as to the resilience of our region and the resilience that arises from having that diversity. We often hear about the need to diversify and those sorts of things, but I think our experience in this crisis has shown that we already have a very diverse economy, and that provides us with a certain resilience and a certain strength that perhaps positions us better than other regions.
Many of our speakers through this series have spoken about the silver lining in the dark cloud, the opportunities that arise from the crisis. What learnings and opportunities do you think have come from the COVID experience for our region in particular? And I'll ask you all this question again. Bernadette, perhaps you'd like to begin?
Yes. So I think for the thing that I've noticed most is that our people have been absolutely fantastic through the pandemic, and this generosity of spirit that has come out. They have truly put our customers first and have helped our customers and helped each other, and so I'm immensely proud of that. And also we had the opportunity to help our customers absolutely through this. So we had over 3,000 customers adopt digital capabilities who hadn't adopted them before, but now with the ability to do your banking online and the need to do that, we had many customers actually adopt that way of working. So we also helped many of our passport customers actually get a card account so that they could actually access their money. And then we instituted a lot of digital capabilities, so digital identification and things like that. One of the silver linings was that there's been this spontaneous generosity, so that our people, we have around about 1,000 people. Pretty much all of our people work in the Hunter and Newcastle region, and we were able to shift work around our people, and our people were really happy to do that. We were able to keep our branches open, and in keeping our branches open, when they weren't busy, they did other work for areas that were really under pressure, like our customer assist area. So that was a silver lining, and we had not actually done that before. We had thought, oh, you know, you do this job, so that's what you do. And what this has meant is that our people actually have an ability to do different work and do different things. The other thing was that we learned a lot about our people. We learned more about what well-being means to them and how we could support them in their well-being. And we learned more about how flexible work suits them. We learned more about how they would want to, as they're juggling homeschooling, safe working, you know, the whole broader thing. We actually are now having some learnings that we take into our future of work on how we help people work remotely, how we help them actually manage their family commitments and still have a vibrant career with us. And look, I mentioned a little bit earlier, we have learned a lot about our people's ingenuity, right? So what sporting memorabilia they have on the back wall is through the virtual meetings, how their cat likes to lie on their keyboard during a virtual meeting, but also how innovative people have been in continuing to have some fun, because it's been incredibly important for our people's well-being to have that balance of meeting the challenges that our customers are seeing and our communities are seeing, supporting each other, but still having that camaraderie and that fun. So there's been lots of silver linings for us out of this, and more deeply knowing our culture, more deeply knowing our customers.
Peter, to you, I guess it's hard to see a silver lining when you've lost, what was it, 99.6% of your business. But, you know, are there opportunities arising from COVID from your perspective?
Oh, certainly. And I mean, the way the regions come together, the Lord Mayor brought together a city leaders forum with the City of Newcastle, and that had people like Hunter workers sitting down with the business chamber, with the university, with financial institutions, with private corporates. And that meeting was pulled together relatively quickly and was very productive, and people have been very engaged. You've got the Together Not Alone kind of movement with UTS, and I think I wasn't here, but I've heard the stories of how the region came together around when the closure of BHP occurred. And it just seems to me that in terms of opportunities, this is an amazing one we should maybe not use the word recovery, but perhaps we should be thinking about reinventing or going forward. And I think that's a huge challenge. But I think we've shown that when there's a crisis, we can band together and we can really achieve that. So I think that is really a silver lining. And being appreciative, I think being appreciative for what we've got. You've got the likes of Varley and Amp Control who have just shown their ingenuity, and that we still have a very strong and very capable manufacturing base here in the Hunter, and that heritage we haven't lost that heritage, and that's something really to go forward with. Also, and perhaps this is from a more personal, just I think so appreciative of Hunter New England Health, and I found it great to know that we had such competent, dedicated, well-organised professional health providers within our community. So I think appreciative of what the Hunter has in terms of regional lifestyle, but also access to modern and a full range of services. So I think there are silver linings, and I think I think now the challenge is to build on that momentum and that goodwill that we've got, and pull this region forward and be a strong part of Australia's recovery and reinventing ourselves.
Hennie, we've got a comment here from somebody who's asking about the diversity of our region's economy and where further improvements in diversity might be made. Do you see the fact that COVID has highlighted some of our capabilities as one of the opportunities sort of going forward?
Yeah, definitely, Amy. I think the one thing that it has highlighted, which both Peter and Bernadette touched on, is that we need to value the diversity and the things that provides us the resilience that already exists, and that we need to build on those. And then there are other sectors of our economy, such as IT services and startups and so on, which are a lot less affected by the sort of crisis that we've just been through. And clearly in that space, we still have a lot of opportunity to turn that into growth opportunities, and that links into some of our existing strengths, like the airport and the special activation precinct that's recently been announced out there, the link to defence, the technology link to the health sector. All of those things provides us significant opportunity, and I think this crisis that we've just been through, or are still going through, because I think there is a risk that we'll see we haven't seen all the impacts yet. There are certainly some of the impacts that we expect will be somewhat delayed, whether it's in the construction sector because of projects that didn't get started during this period. That'll lead to some softening later in the year, or ongoing impacts in the resources sector as the full impact of price declines work through. There's a lot to build on, and we can be very self-critical in this region, and I think the challenge for us is to recognise our strengths, recognise the weaknesses that are highlighted through periods such as this, and build on the strengths to mitigate the risks that go with those weaknesses.
Hennie, talking about impacts of COVID, what sort of workplace practices and processes do you think will change permanently as a result of this pandemic, and for the better or worse?
I think the one key learning for us has been, and Bernadette touched on it, is just the adaptability of our people. We've seen changes in practices in how people challenge themselves to find different ways of doing things that we previously wouldn't have considered, or previously would have thought too hard, or previously would have had an industrial argument about. This was certainly a trigger for leadership, management, and our employees to work together to consider how we'll overcome the challenges presented by COVID. And that adaptability, the resilience that comes from that, we'll definitely be aiming to build on. I think the one thing we've all learned is that we'll be questioning the need to be physically present everywhere. And the trade-off between being present, physically present, and the time spent traveling. I think we've all learned that we perhaps overestimate the benefit of being in the same room as another person when you consider how much time we spend on the roads, and for that matter, the cost associated with that and the environmental impact of that, and so on. I think there's a lot to learn from what we are going through.
Yeah, the amazing thing about that process of shifting entire workforces from office to home was that it actually went very smoothly in most cases. We had Telstra CEO Andy Penn on in an earlier seminar, and he said, you know, they made a decision on a Friday night to send all their staff home, and by Monday morning, 25,000 people were working from home. Bernadette or Peter, would you like to make a comment perhaps on that sort of mobility and flexibility of the workforce and where you see that going?
I'll go first. I mean, I'm not sure we were quite as slick as Telstra. Maybe that's not understandable. There's been a fair bit of adapting on our part in terms of trial and error and what worked and what didn't. We've had a very dedicated and understanding IT team, which has helped. I think the muck it in and everyone coming together. I think Hennie touched on this a minute ago earlier. When you have a compelling and unifying vision, people will often get around that, and we see that with in emergency incidents in airports. Everyone will do whatever it takes to get the outcome. So that was good. To me, some of the technology wasn't the most important bit. I think it was the human aspect of it that really we turned our minds to, in terms of making people seem reconnected with the business. A lot of things happened on our site, and so we did things like we do a weekly all of business Skype link up or Zoom link up. And so we often will walk around and I'll actually show people what's happening in the business so they feel physically connected and understanding. We have routine engagements with managers. And one of the big ones we found was asking staff, truly asking them what was going on for them and what mattered and how they were finding things, and then responding meaningfully and actually listening and responding. That's worked well for us. And our engagement in terms of that weekly part of me, all of company Zoom, has actually increased through the period, whereas you might have expected it to drop off. It's actually more people are becoming more engaged. So that's a really positive thing. We're interested to see how the technology works when you've got half or a majority physically in the one spot and then a smaller number remote. But it's just another challenge. We'll get over it. And yeah, so that's kind of how it impacted on us in terms of the changeover.
How did it go for you, Bernadette?
Thank you. So we will challenge Telstra. We again took 48 hours, and remembering we're a company that has been a present company. Other than our branches, everyone pretty much sits in King Street in Newcastle. So within 48 hours, we knew that we needed to distribute our workforce. So we were able to do that, and our technology team were able to ensure that our people had the technology that they needed to work remotely. But more than that, we wanted to keep our branches open. So we made the deliberate executive decision that Monday to Friday, normal hours, our branches would stay open, all of our branches. So that meant we had to absolutely make them safe for our people and our customers, and so put up, kind of screens and things like that, and have all of that in place. So I think that was the first thing. The second thing was that we had to then turn around and say, we are an organisation that is very much relationship based. So people value their relationships with each other. So we had to extend our technology to be able to have WebEx meetings with 140, 150 people at once. We needed to have virtual board meetings, virtual executive team meetings, all of that, and we were able to do that. But underpinning all this was the well-being of our people. So we over communicated in terms of what were the things that would help them in this isolation, what were some of the techniques. And I would also recognise the university, Hunter Health, who helped us really understand some of the things that we could do with our people to actually get them through this kind of very, kind of unexpected and urgent kind of event that we had facing us. We really focused on the immediate and the urgent, and now we have time to sit back and reflect. And we're reflecting on what our future of work looks like. And so we're asking our people, and over 93% of our people, as we spoke to them through the period, said that they felt our care, they felt that we were looking after them, and they felt, supported through the period. So now we're starting to think about what does an organisation look like that is partly continue to be virtual working? How do we actually be flexible for our people, many of whom have family duties or family responsibilities, or have been homeschooling, my gosh, homeschooling during the period. So how does that look going forward? And we're really engaging with consulting people to help us understand that, help us understand what others are doing, but then really designing what our workplace will look like both physically and virtually going forward. And I think our people will find that exciting. They're certainly telling us they will find that exciting and enable them to have a fulsome life. One of the things that is on our mind, though, is that when you come into an office, you separate home from work. When you work at home and live at home, then you have to be really careful about that separation and that delineation between that. And so that's also something we're working on, so that our people kind of do a work time and have then their home time and their leisure time in that remote working. But I think our people are seeing it as very exciting, and we are now in that design phase.
Got quite a few audience questions coming through, so I'll go to some of those shortly. But I did want to ask you about the pace of change at government level. We've seen policy and legislation being developed at warp speed over the last few months. Hennie, do you think this has paved the way for policy development to happen much quicker in future?
I think we can hope, Amy. I think what it has shown us is what's possible. I think we need to recognise, though, that the circumstances are quite unique. A lot of what we've seen, for better or for worse and for all the right reasons, have been very directive. And while that may suit these circumstances, that may not be sustainable or, for that matter, beneficial in the long term. So how we work with government, or how government and our politicians work to identify what to take forward, what the things are that they can learn from this crisis and continue with, that'll be very important. But certainly it's shown us what is possible. The other thing I think which has shown us what is possible, which I am hopeful about, is that it's shown us that policy direction and decision making and policy making doesn't have to be aligned with what we would have viewed as the sort of traditional political basis. I mean, you've had a liberal government initiating huge amounts of social spending, which in any other circumstance would be anathema for them. And if we can learn from that, and our politicians can recognise that they can safely stray from their perceived traditional positions if it's in the interest of the community, and provided they can make a strong case, then our political system and policy making in general, both at state and national level, will certainly be better off.
Yes, it's certainly been unusual times. I think I was watching the announcement of the JobKeeper package with my university-age son. He turned to me, he said, "I think Scott Morrison's turning Australia into a socialist utopia." Peter, on that issue, you've worked a lot with governments. How do we find that balance between the accountability that comes through consultation and cross-checking and the need to be sort of more nimble with our processes, whether it's government or whether it's processes in a workplace?
I mean, I think that, I mean, I shout out to government because I think they've had a very difficult job. I mean, who would have had Scott Morrison's job in terms of trying to keep Australia safe, and some of the decisions he's had to make, and also, you know, our Premier Gladys Berejiklian. We looked to them for clear information. I mean, we had, it was such a confused landscape. We chose New South Wales Health as our real source of truth, and they didn't let us down. They've done well. What I think we need, though, is for the governments to be just as careful in the economic recovery as they have been in terms of protecting our health, and really look for fact-based outcomes and fact-based solutions. I mean, the Hunter is clearly an engine room of the Australian economy. With the amount of coal produced here, the defence industries we have here, the ability to have the visitor economy, and I think that the resurgence of manufacturing and the growing understanding of both the economic and strategic importance of manufacturing, we are very well placed. And I think that the government has shown that they are going beyond normal political boundaries to do fact-based, high-quality decision-making. And so I think that augurs well for the Hunter, and we've got to push that point, and we've got to let government know that we're here ready. And I think we've responded really well, and I use the sort of the Ant Control Valley examples. And I think the New South Wales government has responded in kind as well. I mean, Minister Barilaro came and announced a special activation precinct around the defence base and the Astra Aerolab precinct, which is again a great stimulus and to give people confidence to invest. Commercial businesses like ours invest when we have confidence. And so I think government's doing a good job, and I think they should just keep on the track they're going on. And I think that that expert base is a really good one to go forward. And I think the Hunter will be real beneficiaries of that.
Bernadette, perhaps tying one of the questions we've got in with the similar question that Peter just answered, because obviously the financial institutions have had to answer to a lot in terms of change and the pace of change, about the principles of as you said, having that customer focus to assist. One of the practices, we've got a question here about small businesses being encouraged to work with the financial institutions to get access to finance to be able to get them through. But you know, this particular question is reporting a very high rejection rate, which might be a whole set of circumstances. But are those? How do you be able to relate to those two about this encouragement to go out there and do stuff, but all the time still with the relative shackles of being still needing to be prudent and being careful about your business as well as trying to assist the needs of others?
So a couple of things I would say about that. The regulators across our business, you know, the RBA, APRA, ASIC, for example, what we have noticed through this time is that they are collaborating together. So, so when we actually have a discussion with our regulators, then we're hearing pretty much the same message from all of them, which is actually really important, and really important in how we go forward. I can't comment on you know someone else's approach, but what I can say is we have very much a retail business, much less a SME business, but we do have a large retail customer base. And the way that we are approaching it is that we absolutely will help every customer understand the options that they have. I think importantly that through this, what we have learned about ourselves is a couple of lessons that we've learned in terms of how do we actually move quickly but stay within our frameworks and stay within our guidelines, because that's both for the protection of the customer and the protection of the organisation. So it's incredibly important. And so some of the learnings we've had is that trusting each other is really key. So trusting your colleagues is really key. To move quickly, we assigned accountability for certain aspects, and we trusted that that person or that executive or that team would get on with it, and we would actually stand behind them. So also being clear on the guide rails, being really clear on the guide rails, really speaking very openly with our regulators, understanding their perspective, talking about our perspective, and getting clarity on those guide rails has really, really helped us. Simple, direct communication and lots of it. So relevant to our customers, relevant to our people, open communication with our regulators in terms of weekly catch-ups, because I think in this time everyone came together with a common goal, and that common goal was to help our communities, help our customers, and help our economy. And government, very rightly has done their bit. So we actually wanted to do that as well, and that cooperation and transparency across, I think, has been very important. What we would hope is that continues, that kind of operation actually continues, because what it says was we were able to move more quickly for our customers. We learnt how we can cut through our complexity, because all organisations think they're complex until you're in a crisis, and then you work out you can actually cut through that complexity. And someone said something today which I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if everyone will know this person, but I heard today that COVID-19 can provide a Marie Kondo moment. And now I don't know if everyone knows that, but I can see Amy smiling, right? And essentially that is a decluttering opportunity. And if you declutter, then that's got to be to the benefit of your customers and got to be to the benefit of your people, and also helps you keep in those guide rails much easier. So we're now saying to ourselves, how do we declutter the way we operate so that we can actually hold on to some of those things that we found during this crisis, which were, a terrible time, but also gave us the lead into what opportunities could stay with us. And I love watching the Marie Kondo videos, so I'm really looking forward to how we can do that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, that's a show that I avoid because I feel horribly guilty as I would be watching it. But anyway, I know what you mean, and it is an interesting observation. Peter, Wayne Deemer's put a suggestion that obviously in your business, one that's globally oriented and its fortunes very much reliant on the decisions made of others. Just what pace of recovery that you anticipate in terms of the, being hinged to the global change or the global recovery as much as what happens in Australia as far as the tourism and airport business is concerned. Have you got some comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are getting new first interstate flights. We've got intrastate flights at the moment, but flights to Melbourne starting up on 26 June, which is earlier than we expected. And they're going to accelerate, but only accelerate at the rate at which people take them up. So the airlines are very sensitive to demand. So as people buy tickets, they'll put more flights on. So I think in terms of our business and our region, we can benefit greatly from what will be a boom in domestic tourism. We did a number of surveys, and it showed local people want to travel. In fact, the propensity to travel from people from the Hunter was very high, higher than the rest of Australia. And people won't be able to go to international destinations, so they'll have to come to Australia. So that is a real opportunity for us. I think in terms of the domestic borders, that's an urgent thing for those to be removed. And that's I think where we've gone away from fact-based decision making. I've seen the health officer, Australian health officer, talking about that not being a recommendation from a fact-based health in terms of the state borders closures. So I think we've got to go back to the fact base and remove those borders. And I think that will also help the trans-Tasman bubble. So for us, domestic tourism, trans-Tasman bubble, and probably the Pacific Islands is a really great start. And take some advantage of that and rebuild our industry around that. In terms of the global travel market, I think that will be some time coming. I think it's interesting to look at what's happening in the market at the moment in terms of these, what do they call, air bridges? So two countries joining up that might not be necessarily natural partners, but because they're of low COVID status, they can join. I think what happens in the States is going to be really interesting. But we've got enough domestic and we've got enough trans-Tasman that'll keep us busy for a while. And thank you, Wayne.
Well, time for a bit of reflection now. So it's been an interesting 10 weeks or so. Some people have lost weight, some people have gained weight, some people have found a passion for baking or gardening. I wonder if you could each tell us of one change that you've made personally or professionally as a result of this COVID experience. Hennie, could we go to you first?
Thanks, Amy. So professionally, I think the thing that I am going to take forward is just the reminder to always be conscious of just how differently people experience things, and your employees experience different issues. I mean, we've had employees that experience the same thing, the opportunity to keep working as an opportunity, and would have done anything to be able to continue to do that. And then we had others who experienced it as a huge threat and didn't struggle to engage with the fact that we were going to continue to operate, and was very concerned. And for them, their personal considerations around health and their families and so on was just an overarching issue. So just a variety of experiences. And in the resource sector, we saw that too. Many of the resource and the mining communities, the mining companies did a lot of work with their local communities to not defend, but protect their right to continue to operate. Because for many, or for some at least in those communities, the mining companies continuing to operate was seen as a threat to health and a threat to the longer term viability, whereas others saw it as the opportunity that it was. So it's a good reminder that we deal with people, not machines, all the time, and that we have to be very conscious as managers and leaders about how our employees experience things, and it's got some significant leadership lessons in there. Personally, I've enjoyed having evenings off, whether it's the business chamber or our community activities. It has been an eye-opener to me to experience how much time I spend away from home in the evenings and what impact that has on your health in terms of the hours of sleep you get and all those sorts of things. So, I mean, it's not a specific notice to Bob, but I think personally I'll be questioning the need to attend every function that I used to rock up to at the drop of a hat in the past.
All right, well, we'll take that on board. Bernadette, what changes are you taking forward?
Okay, so if I think about it professionally first, I've sat back and really tried to reflect on this last 3 months and think about, what we've been able to achieve, and professionally what I'd like to do is take some of those learnings forward. Take the learnings forward that we can lead our teams virtually, we can collaborate virtually, we can cut through, and we can absolutely do things simpler, faster for our customers. But I've also, myself and the executive team have been very clear that in that reflection, our strategy is strong, our strategy is right, our purpose, we've lived our purpose, so our purpose is right, and we have our roadmap to actually achieve our strategy. So it's really reinforced, given us some learnings, given me personally some learnings on the professional side, but also reinforced the way that we have charted our future. On the personal side, look, I'm going to admit it, my cooking has not improved, okay? But no, I keep getting photos from every one of these great dishes they're cooking. Mine has not improved. But I am very fortunate that my mother lives with me, and I think one of my personal learnings has been, on my personal reflections, is many families have faced, really great difficulties, and the elderly people more than anyone else, to a great extent because of that isolation. And whilst I'm fortunate to have her live with me here in Newcastle, she has found it incredibly difficult, this isolation. But what it has meant is that we go for a drive on Sunday morning and I actually explore the Newcastle and Hunter region. And so what the reflection and the learning for me is, we live in this wonderful community, we live in this wonderful region, and I would reinforce what Peter has said. We want people to travel here. We want them to, you know, if they're travelling into Australia, then why not to our region? So it's that, was that personal learning. And then the other thing is, I'm a newcomer to this region. And what has been so wonderful as we've gone through this, we've reached out to companies and entities across the Hunter region and Newcastle, asking for help, asking for advice, asking for input, and it's always been there. And it just comes and people want to help, they want to talk to you, they want to provide advice and counsel, they want to provide capabilities, and that has been really good. And so it's made me very proud of my people, proud of my organisation, and proud of, you know, the people in our community that have a helping and a giving heart.
Nice reflections, Bernadette, and if it's any consolation, I haven't really advanced past the packet cake yet either, although I did finish a 1,000-piece jigsaw this week that I think I started 2 months ago. Peter, finally to you, what changes or as a result of COVID do you think you'll be taking forward?
I mean, I think business-wise, just get the fundamentals right, get the basics right in your business, and they're the things that you really need when times get tough. So that's kind of that. And in terms of personally, at my house, we learned to love the slow roast. So we spent a bit of time perfecting that.
Thank you, Peter. We've just about run out of time, but without notice, I'm just interested, just a very quick answer from each of you. The government and the stimulus packages that have come forward have been quite expansive, but yet for a lot of people they've missed the mark. I'm just curious if you guys each had 10 minutes down sitting in Canberra or in Macquarie Street, you had the opportunity to do something. One thing that's out there that you believe could assist everybody or a part of the economy, what might that measure be? Hennie, have you got any ideas of what could assist?
So the one thing we've heard a lot in terms of recovery and stimulus spending around infrastructure and having shovel-ready projects and all those sorts of things. The bit I've struggled with around that is that that's all good and well, but it doesn't directly address where the biggest impacts of this issue has been. So the impact that Peter described right at the start, the fact that the component of our economy, the regional economy specifically, that is directly linked to hospitality and tourism, only benefits in a secondary way. It's sort of the trickle-down effect of that infrastructure spending, which ultimately results in more people being employed in a certain sector, and therefore general income being higher, and therefore the discretionary spend available growing, and tourism benefiting from that. I have been wondering, and I don't have the answer, how government in a more targeted way intervenes to directly support that part of the economy, the tourism and hospitality sector that has been most impacted by the COVID crisis. So that's where I'm struggling with, where we have been talking about recovery and rebuild spend, is how we can direct that. And as I said at the start, I wish I had the answer, but how we can direct that to the parts of the economy that have been most directly impacted.
Well, Peter will be pleased with that. Bernadette, do you have an idea or of something that you wish they might have been able to address?
So look, what I would say is that we have actually really only seen the first wave, and there are potentially a number of waves to come here. and businesses will restructure to come out of this, and there will be, as Hennie said, some industries that are absolutely, kind of going to be under challenge for a long period of time. So my question would be: is how do we actually have investment to help Australia reinvent? And I think Peter mentioned that, or someone mentioned that, in terms of how do we help to reinvent ourselves to a certain extent? How do we help, our technology-based industries, our startups, things like that in those new areas, perhaps start to have a stronger presence and a stronger growth, so that we actually have that diversity going forward? I think that would be something that would be worthwhile thinking about.
Yes, no, that's a good idea. It's something to support get new things going. Peter, did you have any thoughts on what you might believe would be a good idea if you were in government?
I will. I am just about to run over to Parliament House, Bob, just to lobby on behalf of the region. So I've actually got to go after this, got to go straight away. In terms of the structural reform in the visitor economy, we've got a proposition to increase the capacity of the runway to take at RAAF Williamtown, to take longer range aircraft to connect this community to the world. And that helps everything from the visitor economy. It helps export industries. It helps people like the university to get more students in from a diverse range of locations. It creates about $12 billion worth of value to the regional economy over the 20-year asset life. And that's exactly what I'm going up to Parliament House to talk about. It provides it would change, a game changer for our region. So, and I think we're getting good cut through with federal government. They understand that, as does state, and as does Department of Defence, in terms of they're playing their part in the recovery of the region. So connect us to the globe, and that will generate wealth, and then you get private industry investing, and then you get people like the Doma Group building hotels, or you get Jerry Schwartz building more things, and the private industry and private money comes in from to boost a state, federal government and state government seed investment. And apologies, Bob, I've got to run now.
No, thank you, Peter. We're going to wrap it up there anyway, so we'll let you go. You've got a very important business to do, and we look forward to hearing how those meetings go, because we know you've been pushing at that for a long, long time, and so have many other groups and organisations in the region. So good luck. And thank you again to Bernadette and Hennie for also participating in what has been a really, really great discussion. And I can hear the virtual applause from around the room. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your participation today, for tuning in. It has been very insightful to hear the thoughts of our three regional leaders, all who have very important roles to play. But more importantly, I think with a lot of clarity of thought about what can happen and what we can learn from, to make more, to take advantage of it into the future. And for me, that's really pleasing, because it's very easy with COVID-19 to get absorbed into the now. And we do have to have a very clear eye to the future to be able to make sure we can get out of this and make the most of it. So thank you again very much for your participation, Hennie, Bernadette and Peter, but also to you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us today. The business events are a big part of what we do. Everybody knows that, and I really have appreciated the support we've had through this virtual series. We have got some more in the pipeline, but we've also got an eye out the door at the moment to look at the opportunity to recommence live events, and we're waiting for further restrictions to ease from the government viewpoint to be able to do those in a little bit more seamless manner than what would happen at the moment. So please keep your eye out for that. And if you've got any feedback about this event or the idea of us recommencing live events, we would love to hear from you, because at the end of the day, there's no use us staging things if they're not resonating with what our members are seeking or what they're interested in. So really do appreciate the feedback we get through these series, and welcome any other comments and things from you. So finally, before I close, again, thanks again to the Newcastle Permanent for their support of this series. It has been appreciated, Bernadette, and please pass our thanks on to your very cooperative and helpful team in doing that for us. So keep an eye out again, ladies and gentlemen, for things in the future. Thanks to Jack Ancliffe from Oasis Media for helping us and making me look good. well, the best I can be at least anyway. And thanks again to Amy for all the work she's done in researching these topics and putting together the facilitation for each of these presentations. Thanks very much again. Have a good afternoon and hope to see you at another function in the very, very near future. Thank you, everybody.